PewDiePie is using Linux? Yes, he does, and he says he likes it. He also mentions the more people use Linux, the better it will get. So I decided to contribute my 2 cents and make this helpful and easy tutorial for those of you that would like to try Linux but don't know where to start from. So stay tuned and let's get started. We're going to focus on one of the most beginner-friendly Linux distros, by the way, also mentioned by PewDiePie, Linux Mint. It's definitely a go-to choice for someone transferring from Windows. There are of course other great beginner-friendly distros that you can try, and I've got links to my other videos where I show how to install Ubuntu, Zorin OS, MX Linux, CashOS, and others. But if you're looking for really one of the top beginner-friendly Linux distros, then this distro is for you, Linux Mint. So what is Linux Mint? Linux Mint is a free and open source operating system based on Ubuntu, which is one of the most popular Linux distros out there. It comes with everything you need to get started right away, like a web browser, Office suite, media player, and more. One of the best things about Linux Mint is how familiar it feels, especially if you're coming from Windows. You've got a start menu, a taskbar, system tray, and windows that behave just like you'd expect. It's clean, simple, and doesn't overwhelm you with options. Plus, it's super lightweight and runs great on older hardware. And because it's built on Ubuntu, you get great stability, security updates, and a huge community that can help you out if you ever get stuck. In short, Linux Mint is a perfect starting point for someone new to Linux and who wants something that just works. You don't need any prior skills and it's simple and user-friendly. It's not like you're gonna need some programming skills to use it. That's why we're gonna start with Linux Mint. Alright, before we jump into the install, here's what you're gonna need to get started. We're gonna need an empty USB drive with at least 4 GB space. You can use any higher capacity USB drive, doesn't matter, but I recommend using 8 GB or more just to be safe. This is what we're gonna use to create a live boot USB drive that you're gonna use to install Linux Mint. And second, we're gonna need a computer with internet access. Doesn't matter if it's Windows, Mac OS, or Linux, you just needed to download Linux Mint ISO and a tool to flash it onto the USB drive. And third, make sure you have backed up all important data, especially if you plan to install Linux Mint on your main machine. If you're just trying it out, I recommend using a spare laptop or create a dual boot setup so that you can keep Windows too. And finally, a bit of patience and curiosity. The process is really simple and I'll guide you through it step by step. Got everything? Cool, let's move on to downloading Linux Mint. Now let's download Linux Mint. Open your browser and head over to the official website linuxmint.com. Don't worry, I'll drop a link in the description below. Once you're there, click on the download button. You'll see 3 different editions, Cinnamon, Mate, and XFCE. If you're not sure which one to pick, go with Cinnamon. It's the most modern and user-friendly version, and it is one most people, including beginners, use. Next, choose the download mirror near your location. The file is usually around 3 GB, so it might take a few minutes depending on your connection. Once that's done, you're ready to create a bootable USB drive and move on with the installation. Now that we have downloaded Linux Mint, let's go ahead and put it on the USB stick so we can install it. I have intentionally skipped the verification step because many users just tend to skip it. But if you want to make sure that the file hasn't been corrupted during the download or that it is a genuine copy with no modifications, I'll put a link to my other video where I show how to verify Linux Mint ISO and actually any other ISO that you download. But just so that I don't make this video super long, I'm just going to skip that step. But if you want to be 100% safe, I encourage you to check it out. We're going to create what's called a bootable USB drive. Basically, a USB drive that can launch Linux Mint and let you install it on the computer. One of the easiest tools for this is called Balena Etcher. It works on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux, and it is super simple to use. Just go to the etcher.balena.io, click download, and install it like any other app. Then insert the USB drive that you would like to flash the ISO on. Once Balena is open, here's what you're gonna do. Click Flash from File and select the Linux Mint ISO you just downloaded. Second, select Target and choose your USB stick. Then click Flash, and that's it. Etcher will take care of the rest. Just make sure that this USB drive is empty and doesn't contain any important information on it because it will format it and everything will be removed. If you're on Windows and prefer something else, Rufus is another good option. And I have a separate video about Rufus if you want to know more details about that program and how to use it. I'm also going to put a link in the description, so if you need it, make sure to check it out. Once it's done, safely remove the USB from your computer. Now you have a bootable Linux Mint installer ready to go. Now that we have a bootable USB drive, it's time to boot from it and install Linux Mint on our computer. Step 1. First, make sure your computer is turned off. Plug in the USB stick and then power it back on. Step 2. As soon as the computer starts up, you'll need to press a special key to access boot menu. This varies by manufacturer. I'll put a list of all possible keys for different manufacturers so you can pick the one that works for your computer. Once you're in the boot menu, select your USB drive from the list and hit enter. This should bring you the Linux Mint boot menu. Simply select Start Linux Mint and hit enter. Your computer should now boot into Linux Mint Live environment, which is like a demo version of Linux Mint that runs directly from the USB without installing it yet. Here you can try out Linux Mint to make sure it looks good on your system and works as expected. If everything looks good, click on the Install Linux Mint icon on the desktop to begin the actual installation. The installation wizard will pop up. First, choose your language. Next, select the keyboard layout. I'm gonna leave English, but if you're in a different country, you can choose the layout that matches your keyboard. Then you need to connect to the Wi-Fi. It is very important because if you don't connect to the Wi-Fi, you're not gonna be able to download any third-party drivers, and then you're gonna need to do it all afterwards after the installation will be completed. So choose your network, then press connect, then enter the password for the network, then press connect. Once it's connected, as you can see, the symbol has changed and the connection is established. Then press continue. Make sure to select install multimedia codecs. And finally, the installer will ask you about the installation type. Here where you get a few options. First one is erase disk and install Linux Mint. This option will erase the entire hard drive and install Linux Mint. Use this if you want to completely replace Windows with Linux Mint. So basically it will remove everything from the hard drive. If there are any information, any documents, make sure to copy them before you do that because they will be formatted and gone. Like you won't be able to recover them, probably never. Make sure to copy everything you need before you proceed. If you had previously installed Windows on this computer, there's going to be an option to install Linux Mint alongside Windows. This will set up a dual boot, allowing you to choose between Windows and Linux Mint when you start your computer. This is a preferable option for beginners. If you want to try out Linux but you're still not sure if you're going to need Windows, you can use Linux, but then you can get back to Windows if you need for some programs. For example, like Adobe or some other programs that are still available only on Windows. And if you're using them professionally or can get an alternative, well, you might keep Windows for that purpose. There is also a more advanced method how to install Linux Mint called something else. And this method will allow you to create partitions manually so that you can create your home partition, root partition, swap partition manually. You can assign different sizes. And I have a separate video how to do that. I'm also going to put a link to that video so you can check it out because it is a bit more complicated and I don't want to make this video too complicated for the beginner. So we're not going to focus on it in this video. So if you're interested, please check out that video, but we're going to proceed with the clean installation. And finally, click Install Now. You will get a confirmation message, press Continue, then choose your time zone and press Continue. Now you need to set up your user account, enter your name, username and password. This will be your login information for Linux Mint. Then press Continue. And once you confirm, it will start installing Linux Mint. This process could be around 10-20 minutes depending on your system speed. Once the installation is complete, it will ask you to restart the computer. Make sure to remove the USB drive before the computer restarts to avoid booting from it again. Once installation is complete and your system restarts, you should see the Linux Mint login screen. Then go ahead and log in with the username and password you created during the installation. And welcome to Linux Mint. Isn't it looking great? The first time you boot into Linux Mint, there are a couple of things you need to do to make sure your system is up to date and ready to go. First, update your system. After logging in, you'll likely see a notification about software updates. You can either click on the shield icon or use the welcome screen and launch Update Manager from there. You can also find the Update Manager through the menu if you go to the Start menu and search for Update Manager. If a new version of the Update Manager is available, apply the update. One thing about Linux is that it will prompt you to enter your password for any important actions that you take in on Linux Mint, such as installing new software, removing software, or giving some permissions. So get used to enter your password quite a lot, but that's a trade-off for safety. And you'll see a list of updates available for your system. Click Install Updates to download and install the latest software and security updates. This is important to make sure you're running the most stable and secure version of Linux Mint. What's great about Linux is that it's very customizable and it actually gives you several methods how to perform the same actions. For example, if you need to update your system and your software, you can use a beginner-friendly update manager, or you can use the terminal that will allow you to run a few commands and it will update everything for you. But for that, you're going to need to learn a few commands, which is very simple, and I encourage you to learn them. By the way, I have another video that will help you learn all these commands. I'm going to put a link in the description. It is very helpful. It will show you the basics command, how to update your system, how to maintain your system, install software, remove software. So if you want to know how to do that using the terminal, you're welcome to check it out. Anyway, next, you're going to need to install additional drivers if needed. To do this, open the driver manager by searching it in the menu, or simply use the welcome screen again and click on the driver manager. The driver manager will automatically detect any hardware that needs extra drivers and allow you to install them with a few clicks. This might include graphics drivers, wireless drivers, or printer support. Sometimes on some computers you might run into issues where the driver is not supported and you might have to look for it online. It is not super common anymore, but it usually happens with Wi-Fi drivers. So in that case, you're going to need to have some internet access. For example, you can use like an Ethernet cable, find the Wi-Fi drivers, install them, and then you can unplug it and have internet on your computer. It doesn't mean everybody has to do it, but sometimes that happens depending on different manufacturers of the Wi-Fi modules. They might have proprietary drivers that are not pre-bundled with Linux Mint installation, and you're going to have to look them online. But if you don't have internet, how are you going to look for them online? You're going to need either another computer or you're going to need an Ethernet cable. That's another way to do it. After updates and drivers are installed, feel free to explore. You've got a software manager for installing any new apps. You can customize your desktop by going to the system settings to change themes, icons, and other personal preferences. It's your system now, so make it look how you like it. Linux Mint is super customizable. It is way more customizable than Windows. So if you want to have your own looking Linux Mint, I encourage you to experiment and just make it the way you like it. And if you need help, the Linux Mint community is huge. And there are plenty of forums, guides, and videos out there to help you out if you run into any issues. And by the way, I want to recommend you my playlist that I'm going to put a link in the description as well, where I have a lot of helpful videos about Linux and Linux Mint in particular. So I welcome you to check it out. If you're new to Linux and just want to know and get better with Linux, it is designed for you, so feel free to check it out. That's it. Now you got a fully set up, freshly installed Linux Mint system. And that's it. You've successfully installed Linux Mint on your computer and all set to start using it. I hope this tutorial helped you get comfortable with the process. If you find this video helpful, please support with your like. If you're first time to the channel, please take a second to click the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you don't miss new videos. Also, if you still have any comments, questions, suggestions, please drop them down in the comment section below. I try to read every comment and help you if I can. And like I said, please check out Linux Mint playlist. You're gonna find a lot of helpful tips and tricks there. But this is it for today. I hope you have a nice day. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.